Hello everyone! I hope you guys are ready for the interview with Shayna, who's the head of marketing for FILA in South Africa. So I'm just going to wait for her to join me. Alright, let's just see. Please, guys, if you have any questions that you want me to ask Shayna throughout, just post them and then we'll see what we can do. Let's see. I'm just waiting for Shayna to join me, guys. Just be patient with me while we wait. Hope you guys are doing well and that you guys had a good Tuesday. Hello everyone, welcome. Shayna, if you're there, just send a comment, try to join me. I'm going to keep an eye out for you. Okay, guys. Thank you guys for joining. Let's just wait for Shayna and then we'll start with the conversation. Very excited to see and hear what she has to say and some advice. So let's just wait for her. Hello to everyone. All right. Okay, just I see I'm getting a text from Shayna. Hello everyone. Hello. All right. Hello guys. I hope you guys are ready for an amazing interview with a great LISOF alumni. I'm just waiting for her to join, so just be patient. I'm doing well, thank you. In these times, we can only just pray. Oh, there we go. We have Shayna. Let's see. View. Hey, let's just wait. Oh, you guys are sweet. Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Are you doing well? Did you have a good and productive morning and day?
I tried my best.
Oh, that's good. As long as you're trying your best. Okay, guys. Well, hello. My name is JeanAme and I'm a LISOF BCom graduate. I graduated last year. And this is Shayna, guys. She's the head of marketing for FILA South Africa. I can see you perfectly. Can you see me?
I can see you perfectly.
That's great. Well, welcome and thank you for taking the time to have a chat and let's just jump right in it. And Shayna, I wanted to talk to you about, the fashion industry is such a big industry, and I think a lot of people have a misconception in terms of how big a role it plays overall. And I've always known I've wanted to be in the fashion industry, like just growing up and running to my grand's closet and putting her shoes on and just running around in her shoes. So let's just hear a little bit about you. When did you know you wanted to go into the fashion industry, and how big a role has it played in your life?
That's super interesting. So when did I know that I wanted to be in the fashion industry? I was really young, actually. So I think it was I was like, I think I was about 12 years old when I decided that I wanted to study fashion. And it sort of just came about when I, I didn't, I wanted to be all of these different versions of fashion. So I thought like I wanted to be a singer and I wanted to be an actress and I wanted to be all of these different things. And
Yes.
then somebody told me that I could just study fashion. Or somebody actually said they wanted to study fashion, and I
Yeah.
didn't realize that was a thing. And as soon as I did, it was when I realized I was going to study fashion. And it's sort of been just as clear as day since then. So much so that I didn't really work very hard in high school because I knew that I was just
Shayna,
I
I can
kind of knew what I knew what I
for
was gonna
sure.
do.
Yeah, no, I can so relate to that. Like I said, my whole life I knew that fashion is just it just somehow plays such a big role throughout your life in different ways. So that's
Totally.
amazing. Yeah, but like for me, when I realized I wanted to study fashion, it was so important to me to obviously I wanted to go overseas. I wanted to go to FIT and all these amazing places. But realistically, we had so many institutions already when I was looking for an institution where I can go study fashion. When LISOF came up, it really was to me such a good fit because I wanted to know. Like I did design. I had design as a subject from grade 10 to grade 12, and I was making clothes as part of my exams. And after that, I realized, it's great making clothes, but for me, I love the business side of fashion, and LISOF gave that to me, gave like that you can only focus on, the supply chain, marketing, styling, visual merchandising, buying and merchandising, merchandise planning. There are so many options that LISOF, gave to me, like actually put to light that the industry is so much bigger and you can literally, like, the sky's the limit. So when did you, like, how
Totally.
did you decide, LISOF is a good fit for you? Why did you choose LISOF? And were your expectations met going into and coming out of LISOF?
Okay. Um, so I loved how you interacted with the fashion world as well, and with LISOF. So because I'd known from such a young age, that I wanted to study fashion, by the time I was nearing the end of grade 11, my mother and I were already looking at fashion schools, throughout the country. And so we were going around to the different fashion schools. Like we went to, I mean, I'm sure you know all of them, and some of them I don't even think
Yes.
exist anymore because I was
Yeah.
in grade 11 in 2007. So there was a lot of different, so we just went to all the different fashion schools then, and we ended up at LISOF. And one of the big things that stood out for me at LISOF was, just they had this really, really incredible infrastructure that really felt very, very supportive. Like their infrastructure and their operations just felt very, very well oiled. And I mean, this is just me being able to answer so eloquently in hindsight, right? Because
Yes.
when I was 17, I didn't fully understand what it was that made me feel so secure and supported in that environment. But by the time I got into that environment, and there was the entrance exam and all of those things, it was kind of very clear to me why I wanted to be there, because they were a lot older than the other fashion schools, and because they were a lot older than the other fashion schools, they had a lot of things that were already figured out, and their operations and their operation, and because their operations were already so well in place, it sort of gave us as students just the opportunity to be as creative as we wanted to be. So it was sort of just easy to just be, and to just let our
Yeah.
creativity within fashion flourish, and we could really focus on having all of the amenities that we needed in order to be fashion design or business students.
Yes.
Does that make
100%.
sense?
100%. And I completely agree with you. And I think that's why LISOF is so great in terms of, if you think all the alumni that has come from LISOF and the things that they've created. I mean, Rich, you, Tebe, I mean, Karika now, who was on yesterday, there are Vanna Vessels, there are so many people. And I think that they can strive and you guys can be so amazing, and we can reach our potential, because LISOF created that platform for you to really explore and be yourself and really reach your level, like the top level of creativity and innovation.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then just to answer your question about the expectations as well, like,
Yeah.
did LISOF reach my expectations? You know, I think it's a very, very important question, because a lot of the time, you know, we come into something, we come into our careers or into our academic careers with a certain expectation, whatever that expectation may be, you know, knowing just as yourself what it is that what path that you want your career to take, and how you're going to set yourself up on that path. But then what you end up getting out of it is so much more. So I obviously ended up joining LISOF because of the security that, you know, I felt as a student, that I just described to you, that everything was, all of the amenities that we needed to be able to flourish as design students was quite readily and easily there. And so when I was a student, all of these things technically were just absolutely fed to us. I think that when I thought about this question, initially I said, like, the only expectation that I had of becoming a designer from LISOF was that, you know, they'd make me into Donatella Versace, and that I would be able to, you know, dress celebrities on the red carpet and just become Donatella Versace. I think that was my only expectation.
You know, and I feel like a lot of people, you know, thinking of fashion, if you want to start a career in fashion, I think for everyone the first and foremost idea of the career is, you know, becoming a designer. And you know, I think for you, and you did BA design and you doing marketing now, so it really just shows you that just being at a fashion institution that gives you the platform to just grow and learn in so many different ways. You can do BCom, you can do the BA design, BA buying, BA media, and you can go basically wherever you want in the industry. Like I said, the sky's the limit. So that's amazing.
This is the thing, is that the education system, you know, sort of gives you, especially in your undergraduate degree, it sort of gives you all of these different things that you can explore, you know. So even though I might have specialized in BA design, all of the other subjects, like you're saying, that I had to take, or like I did have to take the business subjects, I did have to take the media subjects, and in addition to that, I also took the very heavily theory subjects, and those theory and the history subjects and art. So all of those things really gave me a larger understanding of what fashion is, further than just being a Donatella Versace. And I must tell you also, I must say that, you know, to even be able to become a designer of that level takes a lot of practice. It's like, it takes a lot more practice than even just a 4-year degree can give us. So, you know, no worries. So, so when, by the time I left, I had, you know, I had grappled with all of these different parts of the fashion industry, so that it really expanded my ability to see all of the different facets. So I'm in marketing now, but when I graduated, I went straight into design, and after design, I went into, you know, curating, and then with curating, I went into education. So there are all of these very, very different facets of fashion, and I think you know, LISOF exceeded my expectations in that way, I will say, because it gave me the scope to think about how fashion as a material object is actually constructed, you know, so that we think about it beyond just being a designer, and you think about, you know, what is this material object and product that we're looking at? Well, firstly, what is this material object that we're looking at? How does it become a product? You know, and how does it move in the social and actual world? And how do we then, you know, how does it gain its value? How is it as a pre-subject, as a subject, and then as a post-subject in a way, you know? And then what do marketing and media do to be able to give it that depth of value? That's really, you know, and that it started me thinking about things. And then another really big thing that LISOF also gave me was a lot of the friendships that I made. A lot of the friends that I made came from being surrounded by people that really just cared about the same things that I do. So, you know, and that changed my conversation. So the value of conversations that I had with people were so much more rich, because everybody around me cared about the same thing that I did. And it also just gave me the space, because we were all so alike and also so different. We almost had the freedom of just being ourselves. Like, when I was thinking of this, a really funny memory that came to me was, I eventually, I think it was in second year, I confessed to everybody that I only stopped playing with Barbies when I was 14 or 15. And that was me confessing this to myself as well. I didn't want to admit it. So I confessed it to everybody, and everybody around me was kind of and then my one friend, a male, responded, "Oh, me as well." I only thought so. You know, that just speaks to how, you know, being surrounded by people who are so much like you allows you to get comfortable enough within yourself to explore, to just not worry about anything else, but becoming really good and interested in the topic of fashion, which is what ended up happening, because we were just all surrounded by it. And it's all, well, at least in my group of friends, it's all we all cared about and all we spoke about in different kinds of ways. And that's really what I got from LISOF. It really changed my perspective on how I deal with fashion and how I just integrate fashion into my life. So it really became a love affair.
Yeah, it's like the perfect fit, you know.
Totally.
So tell me, you know, apart from being studying at LISOF, which I loved, was the whole experiential learning part of it, and you know, internships that really allow you and help you to get some experience in the industry, to kind of more prepare you for when you go out there. So I did a couple, and you know, you highlighted two things that, and we'll talk a little bit more about your Clive internship that you did. And I love that you just compared it to working at a Andy Warhol factory. I absolutely love that. So I'm so keen to hear about that. But you know, there were two things that you said that stood out to me, and it really, the internships and the experiential learning, you know, it's so important to understand that businesses work differently, one business to another, the day-to-day operations, everything that goes into it from day to day to get the end result, just to understand how it works. And then secondly, you said, you know, the team charisma and just that connection and the company culture and how people just work together and work. That's the other thing that I love from LISOF. They really force you to do teamwork, because it's so important in any industry wherever you go, because everybody works together towards the same goal. But yeah, I wanted to hear a little bit more about your experience with Clive Rundle. So please just go ahead. I want to hear all about that.
Sure. So yeah, so experiential learning. I do think experiential learning has a lot of value. I really, really do. And yeah, I will definitely touch on especially what you said about understanding the day-to-day operations of the way that, you know, a business is run, and also the team dynamic. So my experience of so the one big thing is that, you know, experiential learning and your own gusto in chasing the experiential learning journey that you want to go on really does show who you are and who you want to be as a person in the industry. So you've got to be, you don't just, I mean, yes, it's great to take the opportunity, any opportunity that you can get, but the opportunity that you chase ultimately really shows who you want to become in the industry. So, you know, at the time, again, I was like super young and had absolutely no shame. So when all I knew was that I loved Clive Rundle, and Clive Rundle was the first designer that I ever saw at Fashion Week. Like when we were about 17 and I dragged my best friend to Fashion Week with me. She just logged on, so she'll probably see this.
Yeah.
I just dragged her to Fashion Week with me, and we spent all this money on Fashion Week tickets, and we went and we saw Clive Rundle. And I mean, it was absolutely mind-blowing. So, and then like the more I got to understand Clive Rundle, the more I wanted to, the more I knew when we had the opportunity to do experiential learning, he was the designer that I wanted to be with, you know, and I was already thinking in that way as a student. It was like kind of conceptual, but also really, really creative. And I didn't even know at the age of like 20 how to bring all these big concepts that I had in my mind that were inspiring me, that we were learning about in design theory. I didn't know how to bring them across visually, but Clive kind of did, you know. So that's the first most important thing about your like internship and experiential journey. It's who you choose to go with really does define who you are as a person in the fashion industry and who you will become. And then the second thing that I learned from that was they said no about like 10 times. They said no 10 times. And you must know, if they can say no 10 times, that means that I asked them about 10 times or 12. But,
yeah,
this is why I say I had absolutely no pride. I had no pride. I just like kept on going. I kept on going. But I'm also like, I don't take no for an answer very lightly. So they said no, but eventually they just got sick of me and said yes. So I ended up at Clive Rundle, and you know, we went to the middle of, like the end of town, like Johannesburg town, and it was just like, it was, you would never have said it was this building. My dad dropped me off. And because it was like the end of town and they were like, you're not driving yourself there, so they dropped me my dad dropped me off, and it was this like building, and it had absolutely like, there was no signage or anything. So I just kept on climbing, my dad and I just climbing up this crazy dodgy staircase that like had very little lighting, and quite honestly was a little bit like dusty and dingy. Finally got to the top of this building, like had to ask around, had to ask people and be like, where is this? But there was a lot of industry in that building, like there was a lot of factories, there was a lot of very interesting stuff happening on the different floors of that building. So finally got to, I think it was one of the upper floors, and walked in, and it was like walking into Andy Warhol's factory. There was just, it was incredible. It was absolutely, it was magazines for decades. Wow. In one of the rooms, there was a whole room just filled with patterns. There was tables and tables and tables where they were cutting the fabric. It was really, really, really cool and really awesome. But so there was different people that had to play their role differently, and I won't go on too much, but basically my friend and I went together, and we joined the team as interns about 2 weeks before Fashion Week. And it was, Clive was relatively calm, and everybody in the business was relatively calm. It was kind of like the calm, like before the storm. Yeah, but by the time that we got there, a lot of the models had already had their first round of fittings, so everything was being redone for the fittings. But so we basically just got to grips and got to see and experience just that entire process. So we came after the models came for the fittings, then everything had to be edited and redone, and you just got to see, the production manager and the production planner, she would know what needs to be done for the day, how much fabric needs to be done, how much fabric needs to be bought for the, to do the edit or the amendment, and how every person is going to do that. She'd speak to the manager. He would like look at the inventory, go out, get whatever needs to be done. And at the same time, he's also planning the show for Fashion Week. So Freshly Ground Clive didn't have a CD playing in the background. He had Freshly Ground live. This was in 2010. It was really amazing. And Freshly Ground, they did the World Cup song. So to have them performing live at his show was it was so magnetic and incredible. And at the time, people that experienced albinism were in the fashion industry, because the fashion industry it's a kind of gross quality, which is why I have a love-hate fashion relationship with it. But it was just what was happening. So Rifilwe Mudisele opened up Clive's show, and just at the time, that collection was like, on a physical and aesthetic level, everything was pleated, so everything was pleated and everything was laced up, but that fabric didn't exist. So that meant that we had to pleat it got pleated, but to keep it pleated, we had to physically pleat we had to physically keep every knife pleat in its place, pin it, put the pattern piece on, cut it, and then pin it all together, pin the pleats in place, and then that was the panel, which we then give to the tailor. And if it was a lace up, it had tapes of lace on it, which we would then, which we'd lace up partially, and then we'd have to lace it up to completion on the model, but it was super
a lot of work.
But this is the thing, is that you get to learn why he's Clive Rundle, you get to learn, so this is the thing about experiential learning. So, I spoke about the production manager, I spoke about the manager, and then there was the actual doing the work on a very it was almost, I don't know, I guess it's almost meditative, I don't know, but you do really get to understand what physical labor goes into making something as absolutely phenomenal as a creative and artistic design project as it can be. And then all of the people that come together to make it happen. So this is the thing about experiential learning and what it will teach you. It teaches you Clive had his big vision of how he wanted everything to come together, what he wanted the clothes to look like, how he wanted the show to look, how he wanted, that he wanted Freshly Ground to perform, which were the models. So, and also very, very interesting is every single look was designed for, there was a model's name. He knew exactly who was wearing absolutely everything and how perfectly it needed to fit every single model,
Exactly.
So it teaches you how to take your big idea and how to plan and execute that big idea on a day-to-day level, and which different people are going to come in and assist you to make that happen every single day. And that's why the team dynamic is important, because every single person just has a to-do list every day to be able to execute and make sure that your big project comes to life. And then everybody needs to work together to make it happen. So the most important thing, I see someone just asked you what's important skill you learn. The most important skill I learned on experiential learning was working in a team dynamic, working in a team dynamic, and two, understanding what happens on an operational everyday level to make sure that a bigger project comes to life. Those are the 100%. Important things, and you will not learn that until you are in it yourself.
No, that's 100% true, and I love that. It's great, and you're not the only person who has such a great experience with experiential learning and internships. I know so many people who basically touch on the same things when they talk about their experiential learning and internships that they've done. So that's amazing. And I wanted to talk to you about, kind of your life after LISOF and why you decided, because now, guys, I don't know if you know this, but Shayna actually did her honors at Wits in the history of art, and she also did her master's at Parsons in New York in the arts and fashion study. So guys, I mean, sorry, Shayna, I just wanted to ask you, like, what made you decide after getting your degree from LISOF, why did you want to pursue your honors and your masters, and what did you gain from that in terms of your career where you are today? How did that help you?
So, okay, it's very interesting. So
That's a lot. Sorry.
no. I'm just condensing it. So after I graduated from LISOF, I worked in design. So I went straight into design. I was a junior designer for Naked Ape, which was really cool because I never did menswear. And in LISOF, I focused on women's wear. So it was really cool to get into, while I was in women's wear within Naked Ape and then assisting here and there with the menswear, which was really interesting. But I think I'd been so heavily entrenched within fashion for so long that I just wanted to give my brain a larger scope of understanding. As you know, I was reading this book, there's this book called The Phenomenology of Perception by Maurice Merleau-Ponty, who's a French philosopher, an existential philosopher, and he talks about how we focus on an object, and you'll read about this a lot in, like, when you're studying objects and art, is, you know, if you're looking at an object like the way that our visual perception works is we look at an object, you know, and then when we focus, and the best way to focus on that object is when we cut out all of everything else in like the peripheral field. So I had been focused so long on fashion that I felt like everything else on my peripheral field was being cut off, and I wasn't then understanding all of the things that then impacted this fashion. So when in design theory and in history, in design theory and fashion theory and in the history of fashion, we learn about all of the different things that come to impact fashion. You're right? So that was my decision to study history of art. I wanted to really understand what is this thing that contributes to the visual field, and how do people come to understand art the way that they understand it, and what is the visual language that is brought out, that is like created. How do we understand this visual language? That is essentially why I wanted to study art. And in fact, at the time I'd applied for both anthropology and art. And I got into both, and I decided to go with art because I wanted the grounding in visual and in aesthetics and in visual analysis and in visual communication, and on understanding how all of these different things come to impact it. So studied history of art, and that was absolutely mind-blowing. It again was one of the best decisions I've ever made. I just drank coffee for a year while I did my honors degree, and tried to, like, because I went from like knowing, I felt like I knew absolutely nothing, and into this field where like so much was required of me, and I had to just figure out how to get it, you know.
Exactly.
So I just only drank coffee and ate dried fruit and didn't sleep. Basically that is, and like read like very thick philosophy for about a year. It was nuts. But and then, you know, my expectation, you know, speaking about expectations again, my expectation was to understand visual culture, and I, you know, that's how I came to curating. And I always promised myself that I wasn't going to do my master's until I knew what I wanted to do it in. And so I got very, very interested in curating when I was doing history of art, because it was, you know, a fashion show is a form of curating. It's a form of exhibition. It is how the fashion industry exhibits their best work. And that is why I became so fascinated with how we take something and how we bring in all of the different elements to put it on a pedestal almost, and to make it as great as it needs to be. And how we expect, and the different elements that we use to be able to communicate to people, and what different signs people are going to be able to people are going to be able to pick up on, to understand what it is that you're trying to say with an exhibition or with a fashion show or with a collection. So if we go back to Clive Rundle's fashion show, if we just pick apart his elements, you know, he had Freshly Ground as the musical act, as a live performance, not as a CD, as a live performance. He opened with Rufilwe Mudisele. All of these things, you can look at it, you know, when you look at this thing, you see that he's bringing out something about South African pride and South African heritage, but he's also giving the audience this element of realness, because he brings these things to the stage. He's not using a CD, he's making it live. That is an entirely different, like, multi-sensorial experience. All of your senses are being engaged, you know? So these are the important things. And so by the time I got to the end of my history of art degree, the culminating project, we wrote a thesis, and then a part of that thesis was one of the subjects I did was curating, and one of the last things I did was be a part of the curating team that curated this exhibition. And I did this exhibition on the Black African female body and all of the different things that come to, I called it crafting the Black African female body, because I was looking at different statues of that you get from craft markets that are often of Black women's bodies. And when I spoke to a lot of the people at sorry, these questions are so distracting.
I promise, guys, we're going to answer your questions a little bit later, I promise.
When I went to the craft market, so many questions about FILA, oh my gosh. Yeah. When I went to the craft market, I would speak to these guys about why they are crafting these statues of Black women's bodies and are women's bodies, you know. But the thing about it, and why I said crafting the Black African female body, is because it was a lot of the time Black women, and the statues themselves were the color black. These sculptures were made of black granite. And the most interesting thing that could have come from that was they were often based on actual women, so they had names. so he would be like, this is Isabella, and this is this one, and this is this one, you know, which is super bizarre. I didn't expect that at all. And more so, when they were sculpting the statues, they had an intention for where in the house this thing is supposed to sit. So he can see where he's envisioning for it to sit, you know. But the reason that I really looked into this, the reason I really became fascinated with it, was because at the time we were also studying as a group the performance artist Nelly Siwe Kaba. And she is a performance artist, and one of her performance pieces is on Sarah Bartman, and it's called The Venus. I forget the name of the dance. I forget the name of the performance piece, but it's something... they look at me and this is what they see. I can't remember, but it's something to do with the Venus, and it's definitely about Sarah Bartman. And because she performs in Europe a lot, she was relating her experience of performing in Europe to Sarah Bartman, who was exhibited in Europe. And so when I was looking at these sculptures in African craft markets that were for a European market, I sort of saw this very similar trajectory, and how all of these, you know, how all of these qualities get projected onto women's bodies and onto Black women's bodies, that they sort of just have this very commercial value, and they are almost very oversexed. They're very oversexed, so very oversexualized. Like, you're almost walking around, and I can speak to this because I'm a woman of color in my body, so I know what it is like to constantly be catcalled. And if anyone is to ask me my biggest pet peeve, that is it. I have shouted back at men who have catcalled me. It is my absolute worst thing. And it is because we are so constantly over-sexualized. And so there was just this very interesting parallel between that. And I think at the time I was also just really angry. Like, when I finished writing the essay for it, the head of school came to me and he was like, you walk around smiling a lot, but you've actually got a lot of stuff to say. Like, your essay was angry. And it was angry. Like, I was sick of being sexualized. I was sick of hearing of other women who were being sexualized around me. And I was really, really sick of just feeling and like, not myself only feeling, but having this sort of communal feeling that we're all just bodies, you know. And so I sort of took these statues and just displayed them and let them just be bodies, you know. And like, but it was at the same time when I got to speak to these artists, I got to learn how much more it was for them. And so I couldn't be insensitive to that, because they were also making money. So for them, it was also a means to an end. So it's very, very, very complex. But all this to say that by the time I finished, I did have more to say. And that's why I studied a master's. So my application for Parsons spoke a lot about these things, but it also just spoke about the very simple reasons for why, you know, I loved studying fashion, because one of their questions, and I mean, if ever you do a master's application, they want to know who you are as a person and what you're going to contribute. One, what you're going to contribute to the field of study. Two, what you're going to contribute to class discussions, because class discussions are where the field and where the studies are like grown and nourished, you know. So they want to know who you are as a person. So I had to write an essay on, you know, it was a personal statement. And in that personal statement, I just sort of said, you know, one of my earliest memories of fashion was when I was under 10 years old. I'd be like 5, 6, 7, and my mom would lay clothes out on the table, and I would argue back, that's not what I'm wearing, and take out what I want to wear. So it was, you know, it was as much that as it was really, really talking about these real issues that are projected onto bodies and female bodies. But it was the reason that stuff became really important to me was because I understood or started to get an understanding of how media and marketing and visual analysis and semiotics, which I know LISOF students learn in second year, how all of these things come into play, so that when we're looking at an image, this is how we come to understand it. We come to understand it because of all of the visual signs that are in that image. So, and I wanted to unpick that a lot more. And that's why I went into a master's. Did I answer your question?
You 100% did. I absolutely love listening to you, because you're so inspiring, and I just want to just take everything in, and I'm sure everybody else feels the exact same way.
I hope so.
So let's talk a little bit, because I know everybody is talking about your current position as head of marketing for FILA. How did you get to that point? Like, what has led up throughout your life so that for you to have been in this position? How did you apply? Did you work for FILA in a different, or did you sorry, let me just take that a little bit back. Did you start at FILA in a different position and worked your way up, or did you walk into this position, you know, after studying and after doing a lot of other things in your career? And what do you do on a day-to-day basis? What does it mean to be the head of marketing for FILA?
I definitely did not walk into this position. I flew. No, I'm kidding.
You didn't take no for an answer, that's what.
Yeah. So, where do I start? So I moved back to South Africa after studying. After graduating from Parsons, I still stayed in New York for a little bit, and I was actually an activist for a while, which was really cool. Still in fashion. So, I did a lot of activism work in media. So, you know, challenging big organizations for the media that they produce and what real-time ramifications that has on people's lives, as in if you have an emoji that is fat, which Facebook did have, they had an emoji for fat, as in I'm feeling fat today. And the organization that I worked for ran a campaign to say fat is not a feeling. It is not a feeling. You've got to take that off, you know, because people don't, and this is the thing, and this is where the understanding of like visual and semiotics and science and media all come into play in a very real world way, is that you see if this same sort of image is perpetuated over and over and over again, that is what becomes normal, you know.
Exactly.
So and yeah, so that is so that's the sort of thing that I was doing there, and teaching a lot. I was teaching a lot and lecturing. And so I moved back, and I was kind of ready to be in industry again, because what I've realized about my career is that it sort of has straddled academia and industry, which has been, it's something that I'm still figuring out how to bring those two together, because both are very, very relevant. And both are very, very soul feeding to me. So it's just like constantly trying to figure out how to bring those two together. So I worked in media. I worked for a company called The Stylista, which doesn't exist anymore, but it was a content marketing agency, and it was a fashion platform. So when I moved back, I wasn't even sure if I was going to stay. And then this position just sort of opened up almost fortuitously. So I was like, okay, well, let me give it a shot. Let me try. Yeah, let me try. Why not? And it was really great. And my boss who I worked for was absolutely phenomenal. Tammy Rasheen, who has another company now. She's absolutely incredible. And it was really it was really great to work for a woman as well. I've worked for women a lot, which is really, really, really cool. I've been lucky to work for men who have been as incredible, so that's not to take that away. But yeah, so worked for The Stylista in media as campaign manager for a while, and loved planning and doing campaigns. It really gave me a chance to explore how to take all of these things that I'd been sort of studying for so long about creating visual language, and figuring out how to bring that theory into practice. Like, how do I write a brief that takes all of these things into consideration? And sometimes it is as small as understanding that, like, so I did was, sorry, I just gotta plug this into the charger.
It's fine.
Before we lose each other. So one of the first campaign, I think it was actually my first campaign. I think it was a campaign for Levi's footwear, and I just remember the first thing that I said was, oh no, this is gonna sound so ridiculous, but I was like, and you only see the ankles, right? Because it was footwear. It was footwear, but I was like, no, I want it to be a black person. I just want to be, I was like, if it's going to be ankles, sure, it will only be ankles, but they must be black ankles. Exactly. Ankles. Like, I don't care, you know? And this was little old me. I was like very little, very new, not 100% sure of what I was doing all of the time. But, you know, that I knew. So it's small things like that, you know. So I'd gotten to work in media for a while, and then I did creative direction for Stylista, which was really amazing as well. And after that, I worked at Slicker on Life doing business development, which was really, really incredible. I got to learn so much. And now Slicker on Life is music. So it's a little bit different from the fashion scene, but it's very, very, very similar still, and still an important plug into culture. And they taught me about, you know, a part of the South African music industry that I felt quite separated from, and was very, very, very happy to then learn about. So very, very cool. And then I applied for a position actually opened up and was asked to, you know, apply for it. So I did at FILA and went through I think it was 4 interviews, which was
That's a
pretty
lot.
nuts. Yeah. And also, you know, I was really close with my boss at the time at Slicker on Live. So it was really tough. But I also knew it was something that I wanted to do. So yeah, my daily activities on the marketing team are, I can show you
A long list.
So these are some meeting notes from a meeting time.
See, guys, it's hard work. Everything's hard work.
This is my to-do list, and it spills over. And then sometimes, you know, so I mean, it's just it's everything. It's considering how each different part of marketing, how each different part of the brand being marketed is going to be dealt with. So the big things are from like on a retail spectrum, and it takes everything into consideration. So I think today people will think of content and social media, but that's only one element of it. So because FILA as a brand that is sold in retail, it's important to think about how we can retail it. And then if we're retailing it, how do we retail it in like a brick and mortar way, so at the retailers, but also on like in a media, like on the social media, and then it's taking care of FILA as a brand itself. So what sort of what do we do for our social media, and then, you know, how do we communicate with our market? That is basically the most important thing that we're always asking. How do we communicate with our market? What is our market doing? What is our market intrigued by? And I think the most important thing for me to realize is I am not always our market. I'm not always our market. So I have to almost have this out of body experience in relating with people that aren't always me, but talking to them from a very genuine place always. So I would say that, you know, marketing, like being involved in the marketing, is a constant balance between staying very human and staying very humble to be able to understand constantly how to speak to humans on various platforms, whether you're speaking to them when they've stepped into the store, whether you're speaking to them when they've logged onto their phone on Instagram, whether they've logged onto their phone on TikTok, whether they've logged onto their phone on YouTube, whether they are logging, and the other platforms that they may be logging on. If they're not logging onto FILA, what else are they looking at? And then how do we connect with those people? And those other media platforms. So my day-to-day list is, it's thinking about, again, going back to the Clive Rundle example, it's what is the bigger outcome and how to bring all of those outcomes into play, and then really working with the team. So we've got a really remarkable team at FILA. And we all, that synchronicity is really great. So we can, like, we're able to make things happen within the team together, which is really great. And we've got good relationships with the people that we work with as well. So yeah,
that's amazing. And I would love to know, like, because you say the way that you communicate to everybody and how you communicate and when you communicate and the message that you're trying to communicate, all of these things are so crucial and important to keep your customers intact and loyal, and even to, you know, get new customers. But how has this whole COVID-19 situation affected the way that you now have to communicate with these stakeholders?
So it's the same process, really. It is exactly the same process. So you look at what people are doing. It's a constant market analysis. So you're constantly looking at how were people behaving before? How are people behaving now? And if we understand how people are behaving now and what they are doing, what do we do to stay in contact with them? while
Yes.
they're doing in their new way of habituating, in people's new way of habituating. How do we speak to them? And it's the same thing as, you know, think about talking to your friend. We think about, if we think of our market as our friend, think about talking to your friend. What are you and your friends doing? You are on social media, your screen time has increased, you're on these different kinds of media platforms. This is the kind of content that you're consuming. This is what you're doing every single day. So that's, for instance, like the you know, the creatives campaign was come out of, this is what our people are doing every single day. This is how they do it. So it's literally, so with COVID and you know, work, it's the same way of thinking. We've just had to
adapt.
No, I want to say adapt, but it's not even an adaptation. It's just understanding what the humans are doing. It's understanding how we're habituating.
And it's so important because you don't really think about the people in the industry, whether it's in South Africa or internationally. The people are literally over-analyzing every single human being, like you said, what they're doing, how they're interacting with people, what they are liking, what types of content they prefer. You know, and I think I would love to know, you are an activist at heart, you know, how do you take that activism that you have and integrated into your content creation and overall operations in terms of marketing and communicating to the customers? If
that is such an incredible question.
I'm glad.
Wow.
Well,
wow.
Please, it makes me happy. So I'm excited
Love
to hear
it.
what you have to say.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So the most important thing to realize is, when I was doing my activism work, I was largely working for myself. I was working for myself. So I only had myself to take into consideration, and my visa.
Yeah.
Which, because, you know, if you're on a visa, you can't be an activist. You can get deported.
You have to be careful.
So that was my biggest fear when I was doing that in the United States. And even doing the things that I was doing, I was with an organization whose main strategy and whose main business premise was to activate, to be activists. That was their main business strategy, or that was their main business mission and vision. And their strategy, their everyday strategies focused on what more they could do in the space of activism. When we are working for a brand in industry, it is very, very important. And like I said, I have to take myself out of my own body to be able to understand how to communicate, that I am not always the market, you know. In the same way, if I am working for a brand that has very clear mission and vision and strategy, to be able to maintain the synchronicity of the company, I have to understand how to use the skills that I have that are required of me to make the brand work. It's not for myself only. And it's not as negative as it may sound. I know some people, it's easy to listen to this and think, you know, a person has sold out or sold their soul, when it's not like that at all. It's, you know, the brand has an understanding of my background as well. People hire you based on your background, and they understand how you can integrate the things into what you're doing. But when I am working, when working for my company, I build a relationship with the people that I'm with and with my company by understanding what it is that makes that company successful. And bringing the skills that I have to be able to make it successful. Now, in terms of my ideas of activism, they do come in. They're not like protesting. They're not protesting, but they are protesting in small ways. So like I said, when I did the Levi's campaign, and I was very clear that like looked, and this is what other campaigns have been like why have we never seen black ankles? That's a small form of protest. It's,
yes,
you know, choosing to work with, and it's also understanding how do I even put this, where the different how things have been marginalized, because I've studied, you know, social justice for so long. I understand the different forms of marginalization that can occur. So
yeah.
you know, if you're looking, so the black ankles can be.
Hello everyone, I'm so sorry we ran out of time. The Instagram live just disconnected us. I'm so sorry. I'm just waiting for Shayna to join me again. I'm sorry guys, we ran out of time, but let's just finish this conversation because it's an important one. Shayna, just request me again. Oh, there we go. View. All right. Let's see, just wait for her for a second. Hi, Shayna, I'm sorry. It cut me off. We ran out of time. We were chatting it was just so fun. We forgot about time. So, Shayna, did you want to just add something to the end of that answer that you were giving, or are you fine?
Yeah, sure. No, yeah. So I was just going to say that it's understanding the different, how marginalization can occur in different ways and making sure you integrate it. So if that means casting someone with black ankles, it means casting someone with black ankles. It means working sometimes with, you know, an all-woman crew photography. It means, you know, which has definitely happened. Sometimes it means working with people in the creative industry that aren't always given a fair chance. Sometimes it means working with, you know, and it's the small ways of, that's how I at least bring it into my work, into my workings of every single day. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yes, you did. Thank you so much. Okay, so I just want to ask you if you have any advice for some of people maybe who finished their fashion degrees, you know, are looking to start a career in fashion. Do you have some advice for them? And also just for people, you know, sometimes people are scared to enter the fashion industry because they don't seem like it's always that secure, but I'm a strong believer in doing what you love and going for it. So do you have any advice for young fashion, how can I even say, people who want to be in fashion? Just tell us, give us advice. We want to soak all of that up.
I would, you know, I would really just say, I've got a very strong inclination to just say be yourself. Honestly, be yourself. I cannot stress it anymore. And it seems really trivial, and it seems really cliche too. Everybody's like, be yourself, be yourself, be yourself. But, you know, 2 years ago, I gave this talk, I think it was at LISOF actually, on like the power of expectations. And expectations are great because expectations are great when you set your own expectations. When you fall into the expectations that have been projected onto you and predetermined for you, sometimes those expectations are not healthy. For instance, you know, the example that I gave in the talk was, if you are and right now it's relevant again, if you are a black man living in the United States of America or in many parts of the world, the expectations of you are very low. Just a few weeks ago, I was reading a paper on colored people in South Africa and the expectations that are outlined for colored people in South Africa in the professional workforce, and how we are perceived as lazy or perceived as being alcoholics or all of these different things. These are expectations that are honestly projected onto people as a group. And when things are projected onto people as a group, it is often very difficult when you are in that group to become an individual. But why I say it is very, very important to be yourself is because it is important to understand what expectations are projected onto a minority and oppressed group. And the best way to break free of that is to know yourself well enough to have the strength to not just fight those things, but to sometimes have to fight those demons within yourself. And it sounds, again, very negative, but it's not negative, because once you can be strong enough to understand who you are, you will not let yourself be bullied by anyone, and you will constantly you will not just go for what you know you want, that you can feel within yourself, but you will constantly do what you can feel is right, and you will keep on doing what you can feel is right, even when you are being told no. And that's so funny considering but it's very, very important, because we will be told no 1,000 times for many different reasons. We will be told no 1,000 times for many different reasons. But what is important is why you know you're doing it. Have you heard of the book The Alchemist?
I actually have. I've been wanting to read it, but I have this other book that I want to read first, but it's definitely on my reading list, and I've heard about it. So please just inform me a little bit more about it.
No. I will let you read it. But my point is, it's one of the biggest. It's one of the biggest books that it became a phenomenon. It's one of the biggest books of our decade. Yes. And Paulo Coelho was told no so many times. That the book that we have now is from the second publication house. The first publication house, it didn't sell. It was bought by one person somewhere in Brazil. It didn't sell. He understood, and he knew himself, and because he knew himself well enough, he understood what value this had, and he kept on pushing for it despite hearing no over and over and over again. And eventually it is what we have now. George Lucas of Star Wars, he was told no 1,000 times as well. Now we have Star Wars. So that is my point, is that we're going to be told no over and over and over again. It is important to trust yourself and to know yourself well enough that you will keep on going. And it is important to even have that good enough relationship with yourself that when everything else is saying no, you know yourself and trust yourself and have a good enough relationship with yourself that you will keep on saying yes. Because no is going to happen 1,000 times. I'm going to tell you now.
Yes.
I've had it.
But you know what? For every door that closes, there's another one that opens. And I really do encourage everyone who wants to be in the fashion industry to just go for it, because nothing's holding you back. You are your own enemy, just like that cliche, if the fashion industry really allows every single person to be individual and to express their individuality, and if you have something to say, fashion is the best way to communicate it. It's such a big and subtle way of communicating things. So I really encourage people from all genders and all races and all sizes, and if you have something to say, then you have something to say, and go for it. Like Shayna just said, if 100 people tell you don't do it, you are the one person, and you only need one person to say, you know what, yes, I'm doing it. You need to be your own yes, and I love that. It's amazing. So thank you for that. I just quickly have a few fun questions that I want to ask you. Okay, so what is your favorite local and international designer?
Oh my gosh. Where's my mask? So my favorite designer at the moment, I just bought a mask, that's it. And it took me a very long time. I stuck with my disposable Discare mask for ages. Yes. I was like, I am not going to buckle. I am not going to become one of those people who buy, I was like, I'm not going to just buy a mask to buy a mask. I'll buy a mask when I find an amazing one. Yes. So my favorite designer changes from time to time. My favorite South African designer at the moment is actually a brand called Bhutan. And so I finally buckled and bought a mask, and I bought a Bhutan mask just the other day, and it's really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then another one of my favorite South African designers is Black Coffee, and Jacques is just a classic. So Jacques, classic South African designer. He's the show that I see every season at Fashion Week when I go. And he very rarely ever disappoints, and his work is always done to very, very high quality. And he works very much like Clive Rundle, in that they have just like a very, very introspective way of dealing with their of grappling with their inspiration and creating something really, really beautiful out of it. And then there is also, and Bhutan is a bit more of a streetwear brand. And Julian is the head and creative director of Bhutan. He's amazing. And they are also very, very much, they take inspiration from the ground, from the country. That's what's common between Jacques from Black Coffee, Clive Rundle, who I spoke about earlier, and Bhutan, is they are all inspired by what is happening on our streets, and they're not apologetic about it. So as a streetwear label, Bhutan; as a designer, Black Coffee. My favorite international designer, I think, will always be Miyake, because Miyake, because Please is incredible. A piece of cloth is incredible. These are lines by Miyake. I also really love Alexander Mcqueen. I taught a whole semester of Alexander Mcqueen at LISOF. Those students probably are like, oh my God, by now. But
I think Alexander McQueen, it's like wired into your brain, like, by now.
I've wired it into young brains. That's what I'm trying to say. That I loved it so much as I had to wire it into young brains.
100%. I love that. Okay, and then a few other ones. What is the best and worst part of the industry?
Oof. The worst, I mean, it depends. I think it depends on who you are as a person. So for me personally, and I think I touched on this just now, is my worst part of the industry is how just fickle and superficial it can be. So it is really, really, I don't know if we're allowed to swear on this. I won't swear, but I think it's very, like, I mentioned when I was working with Clive Rundle, his fashion show at the time opened with Refilwe Mudisele, and that was in 2010, sorry, when people who experienced albinism were a fashion trend. I resent that. I resent that people can be trendy. It is not okay. So and it does it with different people. Like, Black people can be a trend. Fat people can be a trend. It just takes. But that makes and the second that one group of people are a trend, it means that there's another group of people that are constantly normal. So that's the thing that I hate about the fashion industry.
Yeah, that's very well said.
My favorite part of the fashion industry is that in doing that, it also has the power to change perceptions. And that's why I stay, is because it is the most pervasive. It is just the most pervasive. I wouldn't call it's design form. I don't think fashion is an art. It's one of the most pervasive design forms, because we are constantly, we have to constantly consume it and use it. And even people who are anti-fashion need fashion to make the statement that they are anti-fashion.
Exactly.
So everybody, to some degree, has to consider what it is that they wear. That is I do acknowledge that is somewhat privileged, because there are a lot of people that literally just take what they can get and wear it. So I'm not discounting that. I get that. But that is my favorite part of the fashion industry, is its power to be able to change perception.
Yes, 100%. Okay, then two more questions. Diamonds or pearls?
Ooh. Can't I have them together? Can't I have, like, a diamond, like a pearl earring with a diamond on the top.
Luckily, we're in the fashion industry where you can have literally anything you want. So 100%, you can have them both. I'm happy with that answer.
No. I have to choose. I have to say, see, pearls, I like pearls because they're really sensitive. Like, you have to, even if you have pearls, you have to keep them in a certain way so that they don't get damaged. You know, they have to store them in a certain way so they don't get damaged. So I like that sensitivity of pearls. Maybe I'm a pearl person. I think pearls.
You just realized something.
I just realized that. Yeah, I think I like pearls.
I love that.
I mean, the diamonds are nice. Diamonds are nice.
Diamonds will always be a girl's best friend. So, you know, we'll keep it at that for now. And then the last one, do you prefer vintage or new?
Oof. Vintage or new? It depends what phase of life I'm in.
But vintage is always great.
Hey,
I said vintage is awesome. You know what I love? Vintage just has that slow fashion part of it, which is something that I love. You know, just you taking something from the old, because trends cycle and they become new, and most of the time something new will never be as good as it was as a vintage item, you know.
You see, that's where I must disagree and why I'm gonna say new, because
I love this.
because you know, we've always, vintage is beautiful. It is beautiful, and it does have this nostalgia to it. But what I like about new is that if when something is new and now, it is constant, it is capturing what is of the now, you know? And so in 10 years, when people are looking at it as a vintage thing, they'll understand what was happening. And that's my new.
Nice.
I'm going to go new just because it's capturing what is happening currently. And I'm always trying to understand my life by what is happening right now. I interpret it through the lens of history, but what is happening right now is always the most important. So I'm going to go with new.
I love that answer. Yeah. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for your time, Shayna. I really enjoyed having a chat with you. And then, you guys, I just wanted to say that if you have any questions, you are more than welcome to DM LISOF, or you can just go to their website and just get their email addresses. But I just want to take 2 seconds. I just want to hand out the fashion voucher, you guys, and I'm going to give it to hold on. Amogelang. So if that's your
totally
handle,
agree.
Please just
she
send
was
a DM
so with
to
it. So she was asking questions
the whole time. I loved it.
Like
so
please,
yes. So DM LISOF with your details, and then they will discuss it with you further. And then I think, and then next at 7 o'clock, you guys, it's only at 7, not 6 o'clock. You'll find another interview on the LISOF Instagram Live with Danielle, who's a designer at Truers. So thank you. So once again, Shayna, it was so lovely chatting to you. It was so inspiring. And I myself can't, and I know everyone else can't wait to see what you do with the rest of your career. You are a trailblazer.
Thank you. That's very, very kind. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day. Keep safe.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.